Thank you, Ashok, Ranjana, for the privilege that you've offered us to be your knowledge partners in what is a report that is titled India-US Trade Mission 500 Billion, and that I'm hoping is going to be launched in the next few minutes. But it's doubly auspicious that this report is being launched on a day when the leader of our nation, Prime Minister Modi, is actively canvassing for this very cause in the United States. So I think it's very well timed. I know you've had some frustrations getting some people across, but that auspiciousness cannot be ignored. Clearly, the report is going to be launched now. It will be available on the website for you to study. But what I'd like to do is to give you a few remarks so that the proceedings of today and tomorrow can be guided by some of the thinking which has gone into it. And I want to thank many of you who have been party to that report, to making it happen, to the research team, which has worked over the last month or so to make it happen. Getting to 500 billion trade in 10 years' time can be done if we were to grow at the historic rate of about 13% per annum, which we have done over the last decade or so. That will take us to 360 billion in trade. So the real challenge for this room and the real challenge for others is to see how we can accelerate that growth rate from 13% to roughly 17%, which will get us to that 5 billion over the next 10 years. As you'll see in the report, we have 5 pillars to make that happen. The first is a realization that we both need to have as two large countries, that between these two nations, we represent the voices and aspirations of something like 1.6 billion people of the 7.2 billion who exist on this planet. And together as two nations, of course, US has the lion's share of the GDP of the world. We are almost more than a quarter of the world's GDP as well. And that is the first pillar, that realization that together we are an engine of self-sustaining trade and growth is very critical. And that realization, I'm hoping, galvanizes both the government and indeed the private sector in taking a lead, and many parts of the report are on specific measures that can make that happen. And indeed, I'm pleased to say that some of those have been remarked upon by the speakers before. IP is one, clearly. I can see that Michael mentioned that very clearly. From our side, there are some restrictions in terms of movement of people, which are bothering the Indians. So some of those discussions, issues should be hopefully a topic of discussion over the next couple of days. But equally, technology as an enabler and people-to-people interaction are very fundamental to this growth. And this is where I was moved by the Facebook town hall that Prime Minister Modi led, where not only was there a lot of people-to-people interaction, I must say, but there was a fair bit of technology in the air. He's a very technology-savvy minister. And I was very appreciative of Michael's remark earlier just now about innovation, because I do believe that these two nations, if they get their act together, can really drive innovation, not just in India and the US, but across the world. Now, finally, the growth that we envisage, the 17% growth, or the 13.5% or the 12.7% current growth, can only happen if you focus on 5 key sectors: aerospace and defense, manufacturing, financial services, infrastructure and logistics, and energy. And you'll see that Ranjana has crafted the whole agenda around those sectors. I see manufacturing missing, but manufacturing in some ways subsumes many other sectors that we're going to talk about. So I think that's the way the agenda has been talked over the next few days. And I'm hoping that there's a robust discussion on that. Finally, I think this forum requires us to move beyond the ordinary to the extraordinary. India needs the forceful energy, the huge economic capital that US has as it moves from 2 trillion to a 5 trillion economy over the next 10 years. But equally, I would posit that US needs the entrepreneurship and youthful energies of this nation. And I think therein lies the partnership. So I'm hoping that we are enjoined in a good discussion over the next couple of days. We've been privileged to be part of this. And I do believe that this room has been watched not just by the many citizens of our nation, but as Mike said, probably a lot of other growth markets, and I do a fair bit of work in other growth markets, are watching this dialogue, because I think the secret of democratic, entrepreneurial-led success lies in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashank. And now may I ask Mike Delaney to please release the report. Can you ask other speakers to please stand up? Can I have some more copies for the people of the dais to hold it, please? a report which is going to take up the bilateral engagement further and the economic synergy. Today, the Indian companies in the US have created more than 500,000 jobs. And the investment and the economic synergy is mutual. We've had companies like Citigroup and GE here in India for over